Hello and welcome to Holistic Keys to Health. My name is Bolanle, your mental health and nutrition advisor. Here I share insights on mental health, nutrition and evidence-based psychological interventions that may help improve your holistic well-being. Today we'll be talking about strange behaviors commonly found in autistic children. When I say strange behaviors, I don't mean that they are bad, but what they are is that they're unusual. They are not the kind of behaviors you find in neurotypical children or in many neurotypical children. Some of them could be found in some neurotypical kids because there are behavioral symptoms that could overlap even with neurotypical children. However, these behaviors are considered unusual. Some people like to term them as quirky, and that is why I want to discuss them with you. I happen to have experienced a lot of these behaviors I'm about to share with you because I have experienced them firsthand with my own children, and so I am very much aware of this. This is not just textbook reading, this is personal experience plus what I've also experienced with the children that I have managed over the years. And I can tell you that a lot of these behaviors are common in autistic children. So I'll be sharing a number of them, and here we go. The first strange behavior I'll be talking about has been discussed in the previous video where I talk about the 12 signs of autism in kids, and that is finding a child burst into laughter for a long time for an unknown cause. You just wonder, why is this child laughing so much? Why is he laughing hysterically for so long? Yes, some people may term it as something spiritual or some whatever it is, but honestly it's not that. Most times, according to research, it is said that it could be a sign of yeast overgrowth in your child. You could take your child for a test on yeast overgrowth, maybe the presence of excess candida in their gut, and you can treat that. Aside from what research says, I personally think that these children are reliving an experience that they've had. A funny one is either they watched something really funny on TV or on their tablet, or maybe in real life they might have seen something that they found funny and they are reliving it over and over, and it's making them laugh. But unfortunately, because most times the children you find with this behavior are non-verbal, that's why it's difficult for them to express what is going on in their minds. So you should be patient with them. You could treat candida if you suspect it's a case of yeast overgrowth, but if it's not, then you can just be patient with them and laugh along. I mean, it's just laughter. There's nothing harmful about it. The next strange behavior I'm going to talk about is finding a child scream or cry out when the car is on reverse. Yes, this happened to my children at different times, and it's amazing really, because no one would ever imagine that reversing a car would have such a strong effect on someone. Yes, it's cold, and that's because they have a very low integration to sensory stimuli. What they're experiencing is morbid fear. They are probably afraid that they're probably going to fall from a great height, or they're probably just feeling dizzy from you moving the car, and it's so strong, the effect is so strong that they can't help it but cry out. So please don't raise your voice at them, don't scream back at them, because you're not doing anything, you're not solving any problem. What you can do is continuously reassure them that it's fine, it's not going to take too long. If you can slow the car, better off. I would advise that you permanently take your child out of the vehicle and then reverse before your child gets back. No, that's not doable. With time, they learn to integrate properly. So it's not about taking them completely away from that environment or from that experience. It's about gently guiding them into it. Slowly and with time, they would adapt better and they will be able to tolerate the movement of the car in whichever direction it's going to. So another strange behavior is finding a child preoccupied with certain objects. For instance, flicking the light switches or opening and closing doors repeatedly. Imagine this happening in someone's house, or you go for a function somewhere, or you visit a hotel and your child continuously opens and shuts the door, opens and shuts the door over and over and over. Everyone around will find it a bit uncomfortable. They would expect you to caution your child. Well, yes, you should actually. You could help your child to do things differently. That is why you need the support of a behavioral therapist. We'll be talking about, you know, the interventions that help with managing autism in subsequent videos. So it's not about letting them be all through, because with life we learn, we unlearn, we relearn. So everyone should learn, you know, different ways of adapting and making life easier for everyone. Another strange behavior is finding a child that has zero fear for fearful things, fearful objects. A large truck coming towards him, or a fearful animal. I've discussed this in my first part, in my first video titled "What is Autism?" But this is also a strange behavior, because it is expected that a child should be able to respond to danger, you know. But I've explained that when you have sensory processing disorder, sometimes these inputs are wrongly translated. So they don't understand that what is coming towards them is something that they're supposed to run away from. And there are times when things that are completely safe, they're actually fearful of those things. For instance, reversing a car shouldn't be a problem, right? For many children, it's actually even fun for many kids, but they find that to be very fearful, very scary, very traumatizing. But a lion is charging towards them, and they're probably just smiling and having fun with the whole drama, you know. So that's another strange behavior. The next strange behavior is blinking the eyes uncontrollably, blinking the eyes continuously like this. So you find a child who does this habitually from time to time. It can be concerning. You're wondering what is going on. Why is this child blinking their eyes so frequently and for so long? There are two things. One is either your child is steaming and enjoying the process. I talked about steaming in my first video as well, so you should check that out. And the second explanation for this is that your child is probably going through a seizure. Yes, your child is probably going through a seizure, so you might want to check that out with an expert. Next strange behavior is finding a child laugh in your face when they see you sad or crying. I remember when my son was about 2 years old, or 2 going 3. That was my first experience, my older child, and I used to cry because I didn't understand why he didn't understand my feelings. He couldn't translate, you know, what I was feeling. He couldn't get that. So not being able to connect with emotions is one thing that they usually experience, and it could be strange. Most times kids at 2 or 3, they find their parents crying, they feel sad, they want to reassure mommy that everything is fine, sorry mommy, but it's the reverse with some children with autism. Not all, please. With some children with autism, they actually find it amusing that you're crying. So please note that your child is not possessed. Your child is not possessed, your child is not wicked. Your child is just unable to process non-verbal cues. It's also a sensory dysregulation, and with time your child will improve. With the right intervention, your child will certainly improve. Another strange behavior I'm going to talk about is finding a child above the age of 3 picking edible and non-edible items from the floor and putting it straight into their mouth. A child from the age of 3 really should have stopped this habit, but your child continuously finds things, sometimes things that you can't even see. You're wondering how come, how did he find this? Yes, your child is not spoiled, your child is not hungry. Research says it's a sign of zinc deficiency in your child, and you might want to look that up. This could also be a sensory seeking behavior, because your child wants to keep putting things in their mouths. Maybe they think that, you know, the texture of that item makes them feel more comfortable, so they keep putting these things in their mouth. Another interesting behavior I should have titled this interesting behaviors instead of strange behaviors, because they're all very interesting really. But another interesting one I've seen with some children with autism is holding on to a pile of books. Yes, textbooks, storybooks, whatever. They just keep piling books, and they love to go about with it. Sometimes it's in their backpack, sometimes in their hands. They want to sleep with these books in their beds. They want to go everywhere with these books. That's another behavior. And if you take one of these books away from this child, it could cause a massive meltdown, or even a massive tantrum. So you don't want any of that happening, right? But what is happening to this child is a case of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, related to the repetitive and restricted behavior I discussed in part 1. Please go back to part 1 if you haven't watched that. It's titled What is Autism? It's just 20 minutes long, but you'll really understand better if you watch that part and the second part before you watch the third part. Moving on to the next interesting behavior is finding a child launch into a massive meltdown while having a haircut, or a massive fit when having a haircut. It's a big problem with many young boys, even girls too, having their hair done or having a haircut. The sound of the clipper is a big problem. You touching their head is also a big problem. I like to think it's a case of tactile defensiveness. The fact that the fact that you're pulling against the scalp may be very uncomfortable. It may not just be the sound of the clipper, but also the contact with the scalp. They just don't want you touching their head. They just don't want you touching their head for any reason. So that could be a problem. They are not comfortable with it. Even some, while having a bath, may not just like the sensory inputs they receive from mommy or daddy rubbing their heads with soap. You understand? So yes, it happens like that. Some other time is the clippers. The sound from the clipper is so uncomfortable that it triggers fear in them. Another strange or interesting behavior I'm going to point out is a child that suddenly stops talking. A child singing nursery rhymes, singing 1 to 10, singing his numbers, singing nursery rhymes, and suddenly wakes up one day and stops talking. It just happens instantly, and that is it. And you're wondering what the problem really is. Your child is not being possessed by anything, by any supernatural powers. What your child's experiencing is called a regression. A regression in his developmental milestones, a regression in development, and you should take this very seriously. Stop looking elsewhere. Stop searching for answers where there are not. It is a developmental issue, and you should watch it, and immediately you should start working on it. Now, moving on to other interesting behaviors is a sensory seeking child, a child who loves to hug everyone in sight. Yes, this happens a lot to with many autistic children. They love to hug everyone inside. That child is sensory seeking, enjoys the stimuli he gets from holding or touching other people. On the flip side also, you find some children who find being hugged repulsive. They hate it so much, even from their own parents. They do not like to be touched by their parents. Such children are experiencing what is called tactile defensiveness, as I've explained earlier in this video. Another funny thing that happens, interesting, strange behavior, whatever you call it, is a child that suddenly stops eating. Your child has been eating solids or any kind of food, and all of a sudden finds swallowing food with strong textures difficult. All of a sudden wants something soft and smooth, or wants just one particular type of food. Yes, it is a bit funny, but that child is also experiencing sensory issues with taste. It could also be a sign of zinc, low amount of zinc deficiency in the body, and you can look into that as well. Then there's something else that is very alarming to many parents, is fecal smearing. It's when your child takes feces from his butt and then smears it all over the wall. I've experienced that in both kids, and it's amazing, honestly, to realize that the child, initially wonder what's all these brown marks all over the wall. It's actually poop. So it's funny now, but back then it was alarming. Yes, it was really alarming for me because I found it Shocking. Like, what would you enjoy in doing that? Yes, it happens, and this is where you need someone to guide you, like a coach or a behavioral therapist or an occupational therapist, to guide you on what to do or how to help your child. You can make use of social stories, they can make use of real life examples just to show them how things should be done and how things should not be done. Another interesting or strange behavior is kids who have a secret storage box where they stash items. So there's like a lost but found secret box, and most likely you may never even find the box for a long time. You just realize that most of your items are getting missing in the house. They have this secret storage box where they keep these items. The child probably feels comfort knowing that these items that he has attached or she has attached something that brings them joy. They have attached that to that item. So rather than have the item lost, they have a secret storage where they keep it so they can go back there, touch the item, feel that thing. It could be something like something simple, maybe a piece of a red velvet fabric, or a button, or anything, just something that interests them. They like to see it, makes them happy to see it and study it. Then they just keep it. And there's one that happened a long time ago with my first child, if I'm not mistaken, or my second child. He used to stash bones. Yes, chicken bones. So he used to stash bones on the windowsill and cover it up with the curtain. So the curtain is always kept, is always pulled, so we wouldn't notice until one day we're just cleaning and then we'll see the whole stash of bones, chicken bones. So that was his own secret stash or secret storage area, and we're just afraid that we were hoping he wasn't going back there to pick these items to put back in his mouth. So we made sure that every time we cleaned up, it didn't really cause any issues. He wasn't crying out or having a massive meltdown over it. So it wasn't a problem for us to just keep cleaning. And then we used that opportunity to also educate him and say no, 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 no. So while you're using your words, you're also using your hands to gesticulate, and then you hold the bone and say no, don't do this, no, don't do this anymore. That was what we kept doing, and just to help him, because it could be a health hazard for him as well. We have to be careful about his health. I mentioned earlier about how some kids don't like a car being on reverse, moving on reverse. Some other children are restricted to certain routes. So when you're going home, you have to pass a certain route home. The moment you change that route, then there's going to be a problem. It's also a sensory integration issue, and with time they could overcome this and adapt to other ways of handling things. And last but not least, just the way you have a child who laughs uncontrollably, you also have some children who cry uncontrollably, who cry for reasons that are not known to you. So not like they're not crying for anything, they're actually crying for something. So they're probably not being able to communicate their needs, or they're having a lot of sensory overload, so many sensory inputs at the same time. It can be very stressful for them. They're probably smelling something foul while you're not smelling anything at all. They are hearing things, or maybe their body is a bit too hot or a bit too cold, and they just can't communicate all of this to you. At some point, when too many things are happening at the same time, too many things that they have to process, and the brain is getting to the limit. The brain has finally reached a point, a limit where it cannot manage these things. They break down into tears. This brings me to the end of our strange behaviors, and there's one thing I want to make mention of: aggression. Many people assume aggression is a part of autism. I totally beg to differ on this. Aggression or aggressive behaviors are not a part of autism. Autism is a neurotype. Yes, communication issues might be a problem, sensory integration issues might be the problem, OCD or repetitive or restrictive behaviors might also be a problem, but it does not result to aggressive behaviors. The environment might be a problem. In fact, most times the environment is a problem. It is said that a child's brain is a tabula rasa, and the environment makes imprints on it. something like that. It's the same thing. That child may have experienced or seen a violence in the environment, and just picked it up, not necessarily from the parents. It could be from the streets or from peers, and then pick it up. Another thing is the enabling environment. When your child starts to exhibit violent or aggressive behaviors, what has the parent done about it? What have you as the parent done about it? Have you tried to stop this? Have you got a behavioral therapist to help you help your child, or help your child directly in controlling that behavior from growing? Every child, I need you to also understand that a child with autism is first and foremost a child. Just like with every child, it's the environment that grows on them. It's not what you tell them, it's what they see. They learn a lot more from what they see. So it's not really about you advising your child, because sometimes these children are having a hard time processing what you're saying, but it's easier for them to see and practicalize what they are seeing. So if you allow aggression, if your child picks it up from somewhere and you allow it, it grows in that child. So it's not a behavior that is associated with autism. And thank you for listening this far. Please don't forget to watch the previous videos if you haven't done so, and then of course watch out for the next video where we'll be talking about the 3 different characteristics of autism. And the next video after is an interesting one, which is about managing autism. So we're going to be talking about how to manage autism, and then we'll wrap it up for the month. I hope you've been enjoying my video so far. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so, and thank you once again for watching. Bye.